and nobody heard anything.
The record button?
I hit record, so
Yeah.
we're good.
I see the little red thing up in the corner.
Okay, so we are
Whoa.
live and in person. Hello and welcome to this month's EmpowerME session where we talk about standards, and I believe the title is Always Raise Your Standards. Um, Typically what we try to do, we want to always align our topics and bring you a special guest, but we did run into some logistical challenges for this month, so I don't have a special guest host. So what I thought I would offer you in trade is myself, Mr. Greg Zimba, and Miss Jonna Hatt. So you're getting really a 3-for-1 stock split, which should really be, better dividend payouts. And so if you guys are okay with the three of us kind of hosting this call, we'll get started.
Of course.
Going to be just as much knowledge either way.
Right.
I appreciate that. I am always excited when we have our special guests. And so I was just a little bummed. And then based on watching how well they've done, I didn't know if we could really live up to the task, but we're going to give it our very, very best. So first and foremost, guys, did you guys get a chance to either skim your one pager as far as the journaling prompts or read? I believe this one was unique. We had a article that we shared and a TED Talks YouTube video. Did you guys get a chance to check out either of those things?
Yes.
All right.
I
So
just didn't get to the TED Talk.
I'm sorry, what?
I said I just didn't get to the TED Talk.
Well, I'll tell you what. If you do get a chance, I think it's an 18-minute long video, but it is really quite amazing. It's a great story. I was just talking with the group before everybody signed on that I went in and did a refresher on it, and I thought it just really had some tremendous kind of insights. So we could do this one of two ways. I have some burning questions, but who would like to just kind of open up based on what you saw? What were some of those initial kind of insights you gained through the article?
Like one of the insights that I pulled out of the article was um not just holding myself like to a standard, but defining the standard, like setting a standard. And then one of the things in the article had said, if you want to change your life, you have to raise your standards. And isn't that the truth? Because any of us who have been stuck in a rut at some, point, several points perhaps along the way, we know that we get stuck in the rut because we are just doing the same thing over and over and over again. And maybe it was working, but isn't working or isn't serving us well anymore. And if we want to change something about our lives, then we have to change something about how we're living.
I like that. I appreciate that. And I think for me, I think there was a time where I thought, almost kind of thought that standards were maybe just this genetic thing. Like, I don't know if I remember intentionally setting standards up or aligning standards to changing my life just with standards, like I expect my steaks cooked a certain way, but I think as I started to kind of get involved in this topic, I saw that as well, that these were really closely aligned to creating change or opportunity for us. So fantastic.
I will say, based off on a lot of the standard conversation in terms of these articles and the TED Talk, I have been told by a few people in this chat that I tend to have very high standards for not only myself but others around me. And I will say that has been a very big pro for myself because I, of course, hold myself very accountable for what I do. But it was actually hurting me as well because I was expecting people to be where I thought they needed to be. not so much just trying to aid them with what they were trying to accomplish. So for a lot of times I was over analyzing things and being able to like read and actually see like how to define like my own impacts and being able to see everything. It definitely changed my perspective of like what type of standards I should really be setting more or less for myself and then branch from that versus just holding everyone accountable to the same thought processes that I do.
Well, I don't want to. I was just looking to see if, like, Greg, I can't see.
Oh yeah.
But
No, I had myself on mute. I was just starting to give some lip service and realized that it wasn't making any noise. No, David, I love that. And I will tell you, I had a very similar experience on my own because I have had a few careers throughout my aged life at this point with very, very different backgrounds. Whether we're talking kind of like I was a wastewater treatment plant operator for 8 years. I was a banker and a loan officer and a manager for a number of years. Obviously, I've had 11, 12 years at T-Mobile. I had time in the healthcare field. And to your point, your expectations change based on your environment, right? What you think people should be like and act like based on their titles, their roles, their experiences. You put your expectations and create standards. Sometimes, or I'll say, I put expectations on people unjustifiably so because of what I intended them to be and what I expected them to offer. And I ran into the exact same challenges that you mentioned. So I think that it's a great call out because I think the more that you think about what your expectations of others are, the easier it is to identify how to reset the expectations of yourself. I thought you said it great.
I think too. And what I heard, David, was, I came to realize that these high standards, which I looked at from a positive perspective, could actually put me in a negative place. And honestly, like hearing it, you almost kind of go, how does that work? Like, do you have an example? I know you said you got feedback, right? Oh wait, I
Yeah.
won't repeat this, but you did say there were people in this chat.
Well, my number one Sharples.
I was
But
just giggling. Yeah, but tell us,
Ooh.
if you don't mind, tell us a little bit more about how you came to that realization, or what was the part that was working, I guess, against you.
so when I guess I should say like when I consider myself with high standards and I was holding a lot of people accountable, like I'm someone that's very metric driven. Like I'm someone that will perform and reach those goals that are asked of me no matter what I need to do. Like if I need to take those extra calls, if I need to support, if I need to do whatever I need to help the community be successful. But what I was finding difficult was those same expectations that I was holding for myself when I was like helping people in like a support environment. I was holding them to the same type of standards of how like I would take the calls, how I would handle the situation versus taking what they were giving me and molding it to what they needed to know to kind of push them in their own direction versus forcing their hand and just telling them what it was. It was like instead of like telling them like you should already know this answer, you've been here for 15 years. Instead of saying something like that out loud, it was like, okay, let's go look up the policy. Let's go look at it together. Let's go find it. So that way I wasn't just like having that level of extremism,
Hmm.
so to speak, to where like even with like CEs or coaches, like I expect a lot out of them. Because they do a damn good job of what they do, and they're constantly overran in terms of what they do, and no one really realizes that. And it took me some time to kind of realize like they got a lot of stuff going on. Like they have to do a lot in a very short period of time. And quite frankly, it's amazing that they can even get the stuff that they are asked to do done without having to bring it home with them. So I just kind of started looking at it more of an appreciation value more than it was like just expecting things to come.
Fantastic. Yeah, I think and I think this is a crossover between part of the video, but it was, I mean, initially we set these standards, or maybe they're imparted on us a little bit too. But then we feel that it's very rigid, or we might even embrace it. Like, hey, it's a high standard for a reason. So I don't know if I sacrifice or I'll let you off, Zim, but I won't let Caleb off. Then is it really a high standard? I feel like this topic is one that always presents you with the constant opportunity to analyze, reassess, confirm, move forward. Analyze, possibly reassess, confirm, move forward. And I think that was like demonstrated in your story. It made sense. You had standards, you held them to yourself, you also held them to the people around you until you had a realization point that was actually working against you. So you analyzed and reassessed, and the result of that is you move forward. And to me, I think that's just a really unique aspect of the topic we're talking about today. What are some other things that kind of grabbed you from reviewing this topic and giving it some consideration?
I think one of the like things that I was like turning over personally was like I think as we like evolve as people, our standards evolve, right? And they should, right? But I had like written down this thing like back in the years that I was, a single mom and I'm, working at, Verizon, which was fine, Verizon retail during the day, but also then my daughter wanted to take dance classes and I couldn't afford to do that and like be a single mom. So I got a job working overnights at a gas station and then, on the because then I'm like I have another daughter who wants to like take dance classes, so I pick up a waitressing gig and it's fine and I'm working all these hours and I'm doing all these things and the girls are happy and they're taking their classes and what have you, and it's a matter of like you do what you have to do when you have to do it, and I was so proud of that, right? I'm so thankful that I'm not in a place that I'm having to like hustle that much anymore, but also like the I like where has like that drive gone to? Because yeah, I don't have to like work overnight at a gas station to pay for dance lessons for my oldest daughter, but also like that hustle and that drive. I have it, I can have it. So what can I do with that? Now that it's not totally like birthed in necessity, but like what can I do? How can I take that drive and that willingness to do whatever it takes to get, where I need to be? Um, that is something I have not done in quite some time. And I definitely like after, thinking about this lesson specifically, like, okay, I can hustle and I can do whatever I need to do to make things happen. I've done it before. I'm just not doing it right now. And I definitely have to, step up my game. It's a different set of circumstances that I'm in. So the standards have changed a bit, but certainly, the importance for the drive and the willingness to do whatever it takes to get where I want to be, like that has to be brought back into what I'm, where I am now.
Hmm.
Laura, I love that. And I love your story. And you're right, you kind of start off with like this hustle and this bustle and your life is just starting and your family's just starting and like you're motivated, you're ready to make something out of it. And it kind of propels you forward, right? And it keeps those standards high and it keeps you wanting to fulfill each of those standards because you have such a lofty goal ahead of you. But as you said, like life changes, and when life changes and things change and the world changes around you, you change. So that means your standards change. And I think we're all in a moment of that type of weird growth because we've all gone through a very funky situations over the last couple of years. And I had a meme that I'm very addicted to, and I constantly think back to it. And I constantly think back to it when I'm not being propelled, or I'm not being like, I know that I have this hustle, and exactly what you were saying, and I know that I can put in the work, but where is it? Like, what am I driving myself to? And the meme was, think of the it was for a woman, but like, you can put it for anything. Think of the person that you want to be in the future, right? The 5 years down the road, what do you want, right? Who is that person, and what do you want out of life? And then in the in between time, you start taking on the habits, like, and you think about, what are the habits of that person? What are the things that that person does on a daily basis, right? How do they wake up? What is their daily routine? What do they like to go do? What brings that person joy? And then you do those things, right? And you do those things one by one, and you get closer and closer to that goal. And then that essentially is what can help drive you forward and help continue with the hustle. Is there's this future self that you want to be, there's this future self that you see yourself being, but now it takes all of the work and the hustle in between that. All right, and you just have to constantly picture it. What does that look like as that person?
I love that too. Thank you, John. That was fantastic. I would
Absolutely.
tell
Yeah.
you that so in the TED Talks, there's just such great alignment in the TED Talks video. The woman's name was Nora Wu, and she said something in the TED Talks that I was like, oh my gosh, I was just talking to a manager today about the same topic. So sometimes you always think it's like kismet, like, oh, I think we were meant to talk about this topic. But what she had found, the same thing, was she had achieved things that were, unimaginable as she grew up as this. She grew up in this impoverished family in China, and the greatest goal that the family had for her was that she would land a job in the provincial factory, right? That was considered safe and secure, and she didn't want that. She wanted something more. But then she reached, and I love, like, we talked about, like, evolving and maturing and growing. When she reached a level where she realized that necessity almost did drive her to not be hungry, to have something more and provide more. And then she achieved the level. She had achieved things. And it was kind of like, well, now what do I do? And excuse me. And so the phrase she said was, I had to redefine my success. And I thought that was just such an amazing thing to say, because sometimes, again, I think we let other people kind of craft what success is, right? We go to work, and the person that we report to says, hey, you want to make it big in this world, kid? Go get me, X amount of Adelines, or go and do these wonderful, great things. And so we achieve those, and that is success. But it might not be success that we created. We just adopted it. We adapted, and we rose. So in our lives, and she spoke, and she dropped also the reference of empowerment. She said, she needed to empower herself to define or redefine what success meant. And I think where Jana was leading me in her wonderful addition was that, what kind of person do you want to be in 5 years? Well, that's kind of defining a success. And then from there, you would think, okay, what would I have to do to kind of achieve that, to kind of make it there? And then you work yourself back, and your standards most likely will shift and adjust. So, it was just a wonderful alignment in stories. I think for all of us, I know it at 56, I've had to do it a couple times, and sometimes, and I was like listening to Greg's story about his career trajectory. Those weren't just like, I don't think for Greg it was, you know what, I've done that. Let me go try something else. Sometimes life put things in his path, I'm sure, where he had to redefine what it was going to take to be successful, to provide for his family, and maybe, fulfillment. I think a lot of us don't realize that we're in the very mix of things like that in life, that these are the building blocks. If you know what's happening to you, then you know what to do. And then you go out and you move forward. Okay, let me ask you a question. Ask all of y'all a question. So in the one pager, so because I think this also Jonna had mentioned about who may exemplify that kind of high standard person, and I believe in the PowerPoint page That was one of the first questions. It says, "Who do you admire?" And real people. So we can't talk about me. Just checking to see if you're listening. But is there somebody out there when we talk about standards and having high standards? Are there people out there in your circle that you admire for those types of attributes? And if so, would you be willing to share?
I think with a lot of that, I would strongly feel like it would be more like my mother, for example, because naturally we already get a lot of characteristics from our parents, but sometimes there's certain things that you see growing up, certain things that you're like born to kind of like end up representing, so to speak. And when you have those types of ethics, when you have those types of standards of what your mother, for me, for example, because I didn't have a father growing up, so my mom was kind of everything. So she was like teaching us at a really young age, like, you need to work for what you want. You have to earn it. You can't just be given things. So like my sisters and stuff like that, obviously they didn't get the memo because they're doing something. But in terms of like myself, like even at a young age, like I started like working on farms to start getting myself money so I could pay for my own stuff. So when my mom didn't have to pay the bills that my stuff would cause, it's how I paid for my own sports things, everything. So I think because I had to grow up faster, I admired her for that because mentally I was a lot more prepared to go out into the world and be the person that I am today because she already had me at such that high standard of how I wanted to hold myself accountable for everything and earn everything that I work for, that it just kind of gave me a self drive and like self motivation to really become
Yeah,
like the individual that I want to be.
I love that. Thank
Awesome.
you. Yeah.
You kind of just pulled at my heartstrings a little bit, Mr. Pelkey. Being a mom myself, I hope my son grows up and feels that way too.
So hi guys, sorry I don't have a
Hey,
camera.
Carrie.
Hi. So I know that because I wasn't reading ahead when I filled out this paper, because I have like 3 pages of notes on the 1 page on the article we read and 2 on the TED Talk. But on this 1 pager on always raising your standards, so I wrote 3 people down and none of them work here. So then when I read the second question, they were like, more like people that were more instrumental, like in growing up. They had things in common. I get not to piggyback off David, but like my father was in there with 2 other people, and they were people that I saw as um, you know, because of the things we've been thinking about before I read further, they were people that no matter what was going on in their life, they didn't let it affect the people they were responsible for. So I did actually have Elmer on there because that was something I liked about him. And he was the first person, or it might have been you, some combination of you guys at a time in my life where I realized, oh, so these guys I looked up to growing up who were always unruffled, who were what you see is what you get, and who always had composure, like in these situations. It wasn't that they had made every decision in their life perfectly so that they had this stress-free life with no problems. It was that they had a set of skills to be able to leave that at the door or whatever. And when it came time to be my coach, or when it came time to be my teacher or whatever, they weren't like, you know what? So I'm going to scream at you today because my wife's leaving me or whatever. And when people shared a little more about themselves, I uh, I found that out. But on the second part of it, where we asked the questions, wait, are you pausing so everyone can just say the first part first?
You just keep going.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say really quickly, I got some of the things of what they did right or wrong were maybe a little too personal to share in a group setting, but I got some key takeaways from them about the biggest decisions that they ever made were committing to a higher standard, which completely lined up with what we're talking about tonight. I hope. Sorry, Zimba, I missed you. I fought with my
Oh,
computer for 20 minutes to get in, but
hey, no worries. No
and
worries.
and so I picked like a couple of really easy things that I could start working on to implement them in my life. So like some of the things are still kind of abstract to me, but for starters, I'm just working on. So like two things, like when do I show up? When do I leave? I know that sounds really basic, but it's just a starting place for me. So I'm adjusting things in my morning routine and stuff to make sure I get there, not running at the last minute saying sorry that I'm 1 minute late or whatever. And then communication, which I started off just thinking like, how do I email people? How do I text people? How do I Slack message people? Because I'm not conscious about that, and maybe not always thinking like this is familiar tone, this is at work writing, and but going a little bit further, maybe like how you talk to peers, how you take feedback, when is the time, like if you don't agree, not say something right then, or think, can you tell me a little more about that, instead of being like, anyway, but just, um, I think taking the time to maybe understand where people are coming from and motive before I respond. So that's as far as I've gotten, is just the beginning and end of the day, and communication, just to start with some small things that I can tighten up my standards a little bit and be a little bit more like the person I want to be, instead of trying to like build Rome in a day. But I just wanted to say I really liked the message of the articles, more even than just like refusing to give up on yourself, or refusing to settle, or setting goals and overcoming obstacles. But I really liked how the TED Talk lady asked, like, what do I really want in life? Like what which I think in the past I've always tried to like be what I thought my parents wanted me to be, or my wife wanted me to be, or what I thought my daughter needed. And then um the lady that wrote the article, I thought, killed it when she said that, like, basically, like, we teach people how to treat us, and how like others will respect you more when you have higher standards. Like, they're less likely to overstep your boundaries and mistreat you, and you'll be treated with dignity. Like, you draw the line and people will act accordingly. Like, that was really eye-opening for me. I don't want to take up any more time, but that was my favorite takeaway from that article.
Oh, that was great.
Thank
Some
you.
great insights and call outs, because again, all of those things I think are very relatable at multiple stages of for me. And I think I'd be so bold as to say for most.
I will say with what you said though, Carrie, in terms of like the actual like communication, like in the Slacks and the emails,
Hmm.
I will
Hmm.
tell you from personal experience, like from just working at T-Mobile, when we were in the center before the pandemic, it was always awesome because everyone was always just so lively. Everyone was just kind of always open and willing to kind of walk around and talk to each other. But once we went to that work from home situation, I actually ended up getting into a new community literally a month before we got kicked out. So I had no idea who anyone was, quite frankly. And I didn't know a face to a name and didn't know anything. So I was going in there blind. And when I got put into one of those more leadership roles very early, I did step on a lot of people's toes because I put myself into that position and kind of forced my hand in there, when what I really should have been doing is building those customer relation, kind of like how we build it with our customer. We have to build that rapport first in order to build the trust. And then once we build the trust, we have their willingness to listen.
Hmm.
Just like our teammates, like if you don't have their trust, you don't have their willingness to listen to you, you can't really support them. You can't really even talk to them properly because they are not going to take what you say at face value. And I know I struggled with that a lot because of the tone, because I always came
Mm.
across very blunt. Like I was a very like, just do this, but I never gave the why behind you needed to do this. And I will say, with working with some of my leaders, and some like tips and tricks on how to like find that tone that matches each person's like personality and what
Mm.
they are known for, it
Mhm.
it tremendously just opens everything up to a whole new like spectrum of communication that you don't even realize you are capable of.
Mm.
David, the next time I meet with some young people that are looking to join T-Mobile and they have their sights set on their hopes and dreams of the career that they want. And the idea of working in a call center isn't managing people and running a team and having all, like, your description of why we start where we start in the company and why we do not promote externally. I couldn't, I've said the same thing, but I couldn't have said it any better than how you put it, and to put it in the true relation, because there is so much that goes into what we do on the phones, and people love to discount it, right? People love to be, nah, that's just talk. That's just, you're just saying that to delay my growth because you don't think I'm mature enough to be a leader, or you don't think I'm ready to be a leader yet, or whatever excuses or emotions we want to put into it. You give some fantastic examples of daily that muscle that you can exercise that brings you to be able to just relate to people, period. And that is essential, as you described, in any position that you're going to utilize within or outside of our company. I absolutely love it. Well said, sir.
It works with everyone but my wife, because if I start T-mobilizing her, I am on the couch for at least a good week. So,
I guarantee you know how to talk to her different than T-Mobile.
oh, sometimes it just
It's
comes
just a
out
lot.
though.
It's just a lot more subservient.
Yeah, no,
Yeah,
David, you're not lying. I'm not allowed to say, does that make sense anymore?
Did anyone else want to share about someone that they admired when it comes to this topic about standards?
I've got a moment now. The kiddos are all taken care of.
All right.
Is my audio coming through better?
Yes, sir. We can hear you.
Okay, perfect. So person that I admire is my grandmother. She's no longer with us anymore, but she was always the kind of person that didn't really care too much what other people around her thought of her. She just wanted to make them smile, and always was a hard worker. Just didn't complain about it. Just did what needed to be done, and again was just always trying to make people smile. He has been quiet this whole time until I turned off the mute.
It's so good. We can
I
still
I think
hear.
it's
We can still hear you
fantastic.
fine.
Yeah.
No, sorry, it just got me laughing because it's kind of cute. Anyway, the main reason I admire of that because it was kind of like also really comforting to know that like you could just say something to her and she was going to be unfazed. And that's kind of like what I like to do is like I don't want people to feel uncomfortable around me that can just kind of say what they need to say, and I'm not going to be like reactive in a negative way or just react to that emotion that they have. I'm just going to try to listen and see what I can do.
I love that. Thank you.
Taking it back around to the piece about the I only read the article once. So the TED Talk I watched it a couple times, but just in bits and pieces. So I ended up seeing the whole thing a couple times. But remember at the beginning of the article when she was saying what having higher standards is and is not. I loved how she said like this was not going to be verbatim, but she said basically like it's not pride, it's not ego, it's not like arrogance, and uh, it's not like rid- uh, rigidity or it's not something like a show of defiance. It's when she said like it's like making your own like rules for a living or rule book for a living. She said something like that, and she also used the phrase it's a form of like quality control, having these higher standards in your life. And the I really connected with those things because sheesh, I don't know, I guess done wrong. And she gave those long examples like about a woman that only dates men based on their bank account, but then complains about not finding love, or the man who, yeah, he likes food and enjoys it and everything, but when he goes to a restaurant, he belittles his waitress. It's like this is not appropriate use of having high standards. But when you are like having high standards for yourself and in your and you have a I think she said something like with a combination of like healthy high standards when I don't want to butcher it, but like when it is combined with like basically having high standards and being combined with also like honor, I think she said, or like conducting yourself in an honorable manner, those things together, then your life will feel more authentic, she said.
Yes.
That was awesome to me.
I
Like, because it was hard for me to get my head around. Oh, I'm like working so hard to not be myself because all these things that I do, they're not right for like a business environment. And to kind of have some validation, like, okay, so you got to figure out how to appropriately within this framework of like knowing what's frowned upon and what's not, and what's appropriate and what's not. And time and place and whatnot, but letting your personality show a little bit so people get to know you. But like I think there's I'm hesitant, right? Because if what I was putting forth was like so magic, I'd be like the CEO or something, right? So obviously there's some work to do, but knowing like which parts of you are like the things that make you unique, like the quirks that make you you, and which are the is the fat that I need to trim. That's still a challenge, and that's why I know I keep saying this about every lesson, but like having that sounding board or person to bounce thing off of that has been in the culture longer and can kind of say that sounds like T-Mobile, maybe not. And so I know this isn't just for T-Mobile, but that sounds like workplace or whatever, and that maybe might be for like your personal time or whatever. It just
Yeah.
still valuable to me.
Solid mentors can come in very handy for situations like that. And I will say, for as long as I've been in a quote unquote professional environment that started roughly around 99, 90, 98, I'm still, and I utilize Red for this. I utilize other leaders in the building for this. There's still things I want to react to emotionally. And I still have my personal standards of righteousness and what's right and how things should be done. But to your point, Carrie, I think tempering that with people that when you have a trusting relationship, and you have a safe space, to where they understand the context and the motivation. That's something that will, well, for me, maybe for the rest of you, you'll be better at it. But for me, that's something that's never changed, but it's always been a huge assist, a great crutch that I don't mind leaning on. And the people I work with, I end up learning a lot from.
And I think something about what was said earlier too, that like in time people getting to know you, they kind of give you the benefit of the doubt, and maybe if you're rushed or hurried and your tone is a little whatever one day, or if you're a little brief, maybe short, they're less likely to get offended. They know you, but also just kind of knowing like what you sound like, your own self. Anyway, so I loved that, and I really related to what he was saying about it, because um well, I was thinking from what I'm sorry, from what Zimba said, I was thinking I liked, remember when I said before about them saying like your authentic self? I like the combination of it saying like you'll reach your full potential and you'll really be you or whatever. Like that sounds uh you know ideal.
No, Carrie, I think, you're hitting on some really great points. And again, and this program isn't necessarily saying, hey, do empower me so you can get the next job at T-Mobile or at Oakland. But there are so many things in where we're at for what we do for a living that give us these great insights. But you're right. I've spent so many times sitting down with folks who are like, I want to go out and achieve something, whether that's performance or if it's moving their career up, but they struggled with alignment. They struggled with who they were, being comfortable with who they were, with all, like I say, our warts and all, and this kind of construct of T-Mobile or the professional kind of message or image. And so many times it was the very thing that actually hindered progress. It hindered progress. And so, hearing what you guys are sharing, it's so important to point out that when you look at all of the things that you've so far in the EmpowerMe program been presented with, as you've looked at it, considered it, weighed it, decided to embrace it, it is about building this you. It really is just about building the you. the you that you endorse, that you decide and sign off on. And so many times, I think, again, we arrive at standards and we haven't afforded ourselves that time to just stop and say, why is that important to me? And how does it show up in my life? I think that's why in that question, it struck me as a really great question when it said, who do you admire? Because for many of us, it's kind of where we started building our own personal set of identification and standards. Somebody very influential that meant much to us. And we said, you know, I like that. I don't want to be that person, but I want to have the attributes of this person that I respect and admire. And so, but we don't ever really talk about it, or at least are afforded a chance to talk about it. And I think that's where you start to kind of say, huh, man, I don't know who wrote that article, but they're talking my language, and pretty soon that is your language. It is how you move about and how you, kind of conduct yourself, if that makes any sense.
Absolutely. I had
I
a
will.
sorry, go ahead. Sorry, no, go ahead. Sorry.
No, Laura, I talked too much. You go
Oh,
ahead.
no, you definitely have not. But I was just like, so I always think back. So like in a previous version of my life, my first like grown-up job, I was 30 years old. I'd like waitressed and substitute taught. And so I was working at my first like professional job, and my boss, who saw potential in me that I did not see, um, in a coaching one day, he said, tell me who Laura is. And he said, before you start, I don't want you to tell me who your kids think you are. I don't want you to tell me who the guy you're dating thinks you are. I want you to tell me who you are. And I started crying because I didn't know the answer. If I'm not, defining myself as a mom or as a girlfriend or as a wife or, what have you, I had no idea how to answer that question. And I left that job and that boss and kind of burned that life down around me in the process. But I have never forgotten that question. It's probably the most important thing that any supervisor, any coach, any leader has ever asked me. I've never forgotten the way it felt to be asked that question, the way it felt to not know the answer to that question, and the years that have passed since I was asked that question, I have never like stopped every once in a while to like ask myself that question and make sure that I have an answer for it.
Mm.
Because I think like how do we even set standards if we're not sure who we are?
Show
I'm
of
sorry.
hands. Show of
Yeah.
hands. Like my heart stopped when I heard the question. I literally, as soon as you
Yeah.
said it, I'm like,
I didn't know how to answer it.
I
Okay.
literally started crying in
I
that
have
coach.
to say this. So totally different wording. I had the exact same experience, and I can make it really quick. I'm in a like getting ready to get married class at church. The older couple, they have these list of 100 questions that you'd never think of, but are so good, and they would like save your marriage if you knew to ask that, but no one does. And anyway, at some point in it, there's one that says, like wanting to know like what your heart's desire is, and it says, who are you, like what's your identity, and then below it says you cannot say your job title, you cannot say father or mother, you cannot say husband or wife. And at the end of it, everyone had I had all my 100 questions out, but that one I got like what she's saying. I got like choked up because I just was like a dad, and it asked it in a way where it was like, what are your goals, and what is your heart's desire or whatever. And then when it said all the things it couldn't be, I'm like, what are you talking about? That's all I am. I work, I work at the school, I coach, or I work at T-Mobile, I coach, and I'm Danica's dad, and I'm Sandel's boyfriend or fiance, and that's my life, and I take pride in it and work hard at it. Like, what are you talking about? It stumped me. That
Mm.
I never could answer it since, and it didn't feel realistic. You know what I mean? And so when she said that, I was there. I had that same experience, and like couldn't look up at these elderly people in the eye because I felt like everyone in the world knows what they want but me. Like I'm just like a robot or something. But that's what I'm feeling in this moment, because it made it seem like everyone had a passion to go like save starving children in somewhere, and me, I'm sitting there being like, I'm just like a dad, and I'm a coach, and like and it felt so plain. But anyway, I
Well,
just had to say that happened to me too.
Carrie, you're not alone, though. So just so you know, and I think even those folks that might ask that question, maybe just genuinely curious to find someone else who has explored that. Because I think
Mm,
one of the other reasons why I was talking about who you admire is sometimes it's good to have kind of that what I call like a bellwether, just to like to check, hey, this person I respect and admire, and I can kind of see myself moving along. I'm not drifting away or coming in close. But the question is powerful. The question is powerful because you have to consider in words something in the moment. And what we've said, the moment that you speak it, you own it. You've committed to
mm,
it, right? And so then your body goes, well, what do we want? I'm comfortable with other people say about me. It's good. It's nice. But what if I pick something and then I've said it? That means I've committed, and there's a lot of
mm,
trepidation because we haven't again given ourselves the ability to just be real with yourselves, be genuine, give yourself some latitude. Because we've heard some other things around. Some folks say standards is akin to ego and vanity, and so with that becomes the burden of, well, I don't know how comfortable I am talking about standards, but it's worth it to consider the question. I will say this. I was going to maybe like tag this on to be clever at the end, but thank you, Miss Laura Lee. This I'm going to assign
mm.
myself as homework. I'm going to wrestle with that question. I want to answer that question. I really do. So thank you. But yeah, that I wanted to kind of just maybe put that out there for food for thought that we're all human and we all are going through this thing together, and that first hesitation was, what would I choose to say? I know what I feel, but what would I choose to say out loud and thereby own, and then say, well, yeah, that's who I am, and I got to be good with that. I like that guy. He's so
And
fun.
it feels bold. It feels almost too bold to dream. I mean, to like it is a little off her question, but on the one that I got asked, there's only so many hours in a day. You're so busy, you barely like have time to eat and sleep when you have all that going on. I'm actually coming on the other side of it right now. My daughter graduates tomorrow, but at that time, it would have seemed ridiculous to me to say anything other than what I was. Like, I've got a plan. I'm gonna be this person. I'm this dad, and anything else would be like laughable. Like, when would you have the time? Like, who even gets to do something like that? But but now I could maybe consider that, and so it is neat how also like over a course of 5 or 6 years, how you see yourself and what your opportunities are changes.
And I really think that that question's really going to ponder over the next month, regardless. Like, even if you didn't necessarily hear, I honestly feel like maybe it should get put into the chat as like a very big focal point.
Mm.
Because if you look at the end of the article, um, like a lot of it was like having the stronger identity. And it was like with the actual like rule book, and it was kind of like your signature brand, I guess I should say. I think that's what it quoted. I'm looking at my notes real fast. But with that right there, it's like with our next stage into the next month, it's what is your brand? And I feel like I'm stealing Sharples' like memo right now. But in terms of this,
David's doing
it's
the yeah, he's doing the
Right.
clothes right now. He's got the clothes taken care of.
I've been pondering it for 16 years, that question. So what's another 30 days,
Hmm.
well, I'm just thinking like with it, like when we're now talking about like making that identity and like trying to figure out what our signature brand is, it's really going to make us take these same questions. Like, for example, like what would you want someone to say about you in your current position?
Mm.
That
Hmm.
one can also be incredibly hard to answer because a lot of people would just say like you want them to say like you're awesome or you're super successful, but is that really what you want? It's like for me, I would want someone to just give me, like, I know, like, for example, Amanda is my TM, and I occasionally meet with her to kind of go over those leadership type things because I'm very eager to try to develop and try to go through things. And sometimes she'll ask me that one question that, like, I will honestly never know the answer to, or I get stumped on because I don't have the thought process or like the mentality to like process what a big question. It was a small question, but with such a big impact. And it just makes you kind of like hit that brick wall and really start to think like, what, how would I want it? How do I want that to actually define me? And like once we actually start working on to this next slide into the brand, I feel like our standards are what's going to create who we are as a brand. So that way we know like what we're truly trying to achieve and what goals that we're going to be setting for ourselves moving forward. Leadership, just everyday life. Because I feel like that's just going to be a like that root, like stepping stone to just kind of like lay the foundation to the already like uphill battle, so to speak.
He's on to the order of our methodology here, Red. I think the secret sauce has been discovered.
It's like next month's host, David Pelkey.
Exactly.
If it's only 30 less than 30 seconds, one other thing like that is when people say, if money was no issue, what would you do? That's the other one that I never was able to answer because it felt unrealistic and like almost painful to dream, to think those thoughts. Do you know what I mean? Because they weren't real anymore when you're a kid and they're like, you can be anything. Well, like, 40 years later, whatever, you're like, I can be some things. You know what I mean? I don't know. Anyway,
everything.
just to leave you with that, if you guys are doing that deep soul searching, like who am I, and what would you do if money was no issue? Like if money was not an issue, what would you be doing right now? Is like
Literally
a
what I'm
good
up
one.
to in the next 30 seconds.
Go to sleep.
No, video games.
Oh,
There
fair
you
enough.
go. Right. So listen, we have 2 minutes left. I cannot tell you how fantastic today's conversation was, and yes, Pelkey's on to us because I literally was like, okay, how am I going to wrap this up? Give them something, and he literally hit everything that I had. But if you want to go revisit what he was sharing, it is number 5 on the 5 main reasons to set high standards, and it does talk about it being a bedrock of your identity. And yes, there is a method to our madness in this entire program. Each topic lends itself to the next following topic in the hopes that you're like, huh, now it's kind of coming together. No one single part of this program is like the thing. They all work together, they all relate to each other. And so, with that, I tell you, I cannot wait for us to embark into this next piece about brand and what your brand is. What do you feel about it? How do you manage it, maintain it? It's going to be fantastic. So, guys, thank you so much for joining us tonight. My commitment to you is I'll get that one pager out in the next couple of days, and you'll see it coming out through the Facebook group and as well as our Slack channel. If you didn't notice, we're really excited. We just uploaded 2 new episodes to our YouTube channel. So along this topic for one, and the other one about taking initiative and showing up. So if you have the time, please check out the YouTube channel and let us know what you think about those latest editions. We really would love your feedback to make sure that we stay on target, on track. So with that,
I will
guys,
say those 2 podcasts were really actually good. So
so thank you.
I've listened to them as well. Yeah, they're
Oh,
great.
thank
oh,
you.
don't worry. I put a comment to make sure that you knew I listened.
All right. All right. Well,
That's
thank you.
awesome.
Thank you so much. We love you guys. We believe in you. Keep pushing, keep moving forward, and we'll talk real soon. Good night, guys.
Thank you all.
All right, thanks, guys. Go Celtics.
Good night, guys.
Yeah, Celtics.